So I have the two guys from Rivers of Nihil with me, Mr. Biggs and Mr. Brody. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Yeah?
Great, yeah.
So let's get straight into it. Where Owls Know My Name is, without a doubt, a lot of people's album of the year list. You know, I was wondering, what for you does this album represent?
You know, we went from, you know, making relatively you know, under the radar death metal albums to, you know, doing stuff that people are like really hanging on, you know. So it comes about in a weird way where it was like we wrote this record just kind of being like, well, we don't really know how many people are listening to us anyway, so let's just do a bunch of weird shit. And then it turns out that people really liked it.
Okay.
So now it's kind of a weird thing. It's like, you know, where do we go from here? Do we try and do the same thing and just try and top it? Do we do something completely different? It's something that, you know, we're still in the midst of wrapping our heads around.
So obviously, you know, Owls fits in with this idea of the seasons as autumn. So, like, how did you want to kind of, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this right, how would you represent autumn in a sound?
I think for Owls, like, I think the catalyst, or the main thing for me at least, that sort of like ties everything together in this sort of like lonely, sort of isolated kind of empty sound across the entire record is like the use of the mellotron, because we had never used that before, you know. And I think that really just kind of like, you know, a lot of the stuff that we got, the sounds that we got out of through the use of the mellotron really kind of like brought this like extra layer of like, I don't know, just sort of darkness and loneliness to it, much like you would see in kind of like autumn. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but you know, just like, I don't know, I guess we, you know, whereas on the last record with Monarchy, it was like a summer themed record, so there was a lot of like fiery kind of more technical sections, really heavy sections. It's just a very angry record. Like, I find like this record, we toned down the tech a little bit, and you know, it has a lot more open sections, kind of not meandering sections, but just more open sections where it allows the parts to breathe and everything like that, and it kind of gives this illusion of like, you know, sort of hollowness and emptiness like you might experience in, you know, an autumn state of mind, I guess.
Okay.
I think you know, we talked about a couple times before we really dug into the writing was like having sections where it's not, there isn't somebody flexing, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like it on our first two records, there's never a second that you're hearing where somebody isn't trying to like break through the mix and show off, and I think it comes with the whole theme of like aging and stuff like that, where it's less me and more like what the full
band needs,
the full idea is. So I think that's where sonically it really touches that fall concept the most.
Do you think that like sometimes in death metal people are a little bit too confined?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, I heard a quote like recently from guy Mick Gordon. He's the guy that did the Doom soundtrack and the Wolfenstein soundtrack.
Cool.
I watched a seminar that he did, and he said something about changing the process to change the result. And like on this record, in a huge way, we changed our process. Like, we had never had supplemental instrumentation like we did on this record. You know, with the saxophones and the, you know, keyboards, mellotrons, trumpets, industrial things. You know, whatever. Like, we had never had that as part of our process. You know, and like, I think that ultimately, like, all that stuff kind of just sort of snowballed and was just super inspiring to us throughout the writing process. So like, you know, like changing the process to change the result, I think that could definitely be said about this record in a huge way, because previously we were really only working with guitar, bass, drums, vocals, you know, and that was it. And whereas on this record we kind of just said, screw it, let's just try whatever.
You find a lot, I think, through talking to people and working with people, especially like in a lot, it's not exclusive to death metal, but I think when you get into, you know, especially very specific genres of heavy music, people set up a lot of arbitrary rules.
Do you think it's like bordering on elitism?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all in the same family of like, if you do this, it's not death metal anymore. If you do this, it's not a hardcore band anymore, etc. And I, you know, as fans of music, just in general, I think that that's something we've been looking to shed for a long time.
It's funny though, because I've spoken to quite a lot of people, and I think that even though there is so much experimentation on this record, everyone doesn't really mind.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, is that like we kind of expected, we didn't really expect anyone to like it, to be perfectly honest. Like, we thought we were shooting ourselves in the foot, but we didn't really care. And like the first tour we did, we went out with Dying Fetus and Die Artist Murder, who are both two like insanely heavy bands, you know what I mean? And like, we're going out and playing a home every night, clean singing, and like it's cool how no one has really seemed to like pick up on those parts. It's like, oh, that's the clean singing part, like fuck that part. Oh, fuck this band. Like, it's all kind of like, I think it all kind of worked out in like a cool way. Like, we didn't, there's no clean singing choruses on the entire record. Like, we didn't like try to like force any of that stuff unless it was like called for. And I think that like, because of that, like the saxophones and the clean vocals and whatever, like, if the part didn't call for it, we didn't force it.
I don't know, it might be to our detriment. Like, I like the bands, historically, that aren't trying to make money. Just doing it for the art of it, and so I guess that kind of is what pushed us in that way, and I think people pick up on that too. They're not going to listen to the record and be like, this band is just trying to sell shirts now. They're not really trying to make anything. It's a thing. You listen to it and you're like, oh, there's a reason they did this. I think.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, gents, for having a chat, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much.
Yep.